Holly.
Hello, Dave.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
First of all, welcome to the What Difference Does It Make podcast. How are you, Holly?
On that note, has it been determined how long we can say Happy New Year until? Did we decide it was until the end of January?
I tend to think like the first 2 weeks are fine. And,
okay.
I mean, my birthday's on the 19th. If you're still saying happy birthday, or if you're saying Happy New Year and happy birthday to me, then it's like, all right.
No, that's actually a perfect marker. So January 19th will be the day that I stop saying Happy New Year, and I will start saying Happy Birthday.
Okay, you could start saying happy birthday a little bit earlier.
No, I could, but I won't.
I like to celebrate. Well, with birthdays, I like to celebrate a week early.
Well, it's actually your birthday month.
It is my birthday month. Starting on January 1st, I start getting all the emails of coupons and free things I can get. So that's what I look forward to in January.
And where do you go for your birthday?
I always go to Denny's, of course, for a Grand Slam, as one should.
As one should. Excellent.
So we're in the window. Happy New Year. Happy
New Year to you too.
How was your 2021 experience?
So while 2021 in and of itself was, probably not a great year for people all around, I think for the podcast, it was pretty damn good.
If this is your first episode, this is a good one to start with because this is going to be a clip show, meaning all the best parts of 2021 will be stuck onto one glorious episode. So if you really want to know what we're all about, it's a good taster platter, right? Or what a sampler.
A poo-poo platter.
A sampler platter, so to speak. A poo-poo platter. Sure. Whatever you want. It's a platter. A platter is a platypus.
A platter of What Difference Does It Make cocktails.
Yes. It was good for our podcast, for the What Difference Does It Make podcast, as I was looking through everything that we've done in the past year.
Okay, before we launch into that, because it really was a fantastic year, I would like to thank you. I don't know if our listeners know that you are the official talent booker. Well, you are the unofficial talent booker. You book 99.99% of our talent, of our guests. So thank you, because you elevated us to the next level last year for sure.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was very happy to talk to many of your friends as well. You have a number of nice radio friends from all over the world that helped us in our countdown. In 2021, we looked back at the year 1984, and we looked at the songs that KROQ played that year. Every year, we look at a different year. So it's very confusing. I'm confused. So
2021 equaled 1984. 2022 will equal 1985.
Yes. We did talk to a number of radio friends from the past year in 10-song chunks about the songs that KROQ in Los Angeles, what they played back in 1984. They have their top 106.7, and we talked to 10 music directors and friends and family and what have you.
And music lovers.
And music lovers. It was actually a lot of fun. I think it's definitely a highlight. First of all, it's a great excuse to talk to some of our friends. That's why I like it. Like we talked to Mike Marone, the founder of SiriusXM's The Loft, also now of Mike's Basement, Carmel Holt of Shiro's Radio, Kyle Meredith, music director of WFPK, which is 91.9 in Louisville, Kentucky. He's also the host of the Kyle Meredith with Radio /podcast program that you definitely need to check out. We also talked to Mookie, the program director at 88.5 FM here in Los Angeles. Russ Boris, the music director of WFUV, that is 90.7 in New York. JC Douglas, the one and only Canadian that I know. JC, like all Canadians, is extremely polite. And so when we got to describing the Style Council and Paul Weller's transition from the Jam to the Style Council, JC substitutes the word nuts for something completely different. Move on to number 57. A little more smooth, maybe for you. You like some smooth jazz? This is Style Council, my ever-changing moods.
At number 57, Style
At number
Council.
57, yes. Did you like this move from Paul Weller?
Yeah, I really did. I mean, I peripherally got into the Jam, and then I really liked the different kind of sound he was embracing. Must have been a swift kick in the nerds to a bunch of Jam fans. But this was quite nice.
Also, he plays Woody the Christmas tree in Halifax.
He is now Woody the Christmas tree, I guess, was on hiatus for something like 15 years. And now Woody is back and JC Douglas is the voice.
Bananas.
You look it up on YouTube. Woody
Yes,
the Christmas tree.
you should. So that's how we started off our year. And that's how we will start off our new year with 1985. Talking to 10 other people, 10 new people. So get started, Holly. Call up your friends.
I'm on it.
Okay. Excellent.
You did book quite a few other fantastic guests that I only dreamt about in my previous life.
Okay. Well, as we look back, we had, so besides the 10 music fans that we talked to about KROQ, we read a lot of books.
We did. We are pretty well read this year, aren't we?
Normally, as I've said in the past, books are for losers, but we talked to a
He
lot
doesn't really say that. You have to see his face and know that he's joking. Dave is a literate guy.
We read 16 books. 16 books in 12 months? That's insane.
Yeah, well,
for me.
For you, maybe. Maybe
Yes.
I'm a little more literate than you.
Because of our interviews, we got to talk to a lot of great people.
And these biographies, these memoirs were fantastic. They were each one was better than the next. And we got some other great stories, not just stories about the books. And it was a lot of fun. My God, we talked to some Rock and Roll Hall of Famers and Miles Copeland.
Yeah, as Miles talked about, he had mentioned the start of the Police when they came to America.
Over the years, I'd get asked questions. You're like, what was the most important show you ever did? And of course, they're assuming it would be, well, the Police at Shea Stadium, with 80,000 people going crazy, or Sting in Brazil at the Maracanã, and 200,000 people, And I would say, well, no, it was none of those. It was actually a show in northern New York with a police played to 4 people. 4. There were more people on stage than there were in the audience, But one of those 4 people happened to be a DJ who got enamored with the group because they walked out on stage and said, look, the hell with this. I mean, these people paid their money. Let's give them a great show, even if there's only 4 of them. And they did. And that DJ was named Oedipus. He goes back to Boston, starts banging the Roxanne single, which the Police had given him, becomes a regional hit, gets noticed by A&M Records, who calls me up and says, is that my band? And I said, well, it is. Yeah. And he said, well, let's get him back over here. Let's promote the record. And I said, yeah, let's do it. So that was the start of the Police.
4 people.
4 people. Holly, she chops up our episode into some fabulous video content.
Check out our YouTube channel and you can see outtakes from all the interviews that we have done all year. And there are a lot of content on there that you might not hear in the podcast. So check it out.
Indeed. One of our more popular clips was with Mary Gaucher. You were in a room with Guy Clark, Lyle Lovett, John Hyatt, Joe Eli, Steve Earle, Nancy Griffin. When I read those in, like, oh my God, to be in that room. And then you got singled out.
Yeah, we're over at McGuire's house. He's the photographer that shoots all of them, shot all of them. They're not all alive anymore. If you see a portrait with someone with a background, that's Jim McGuire's photo. He shot the Highwaymen. He has a certain style. Guy Clark, he's the Nashville photographer for those guys. And his studio that often ended up in song pulls. And I was over there invited to a party, and it became a song pull, and those great artists were there. And Nancy handed me her guitar and asked me to play one. I had done a string of shows as her opening act, but been a super fan forever for her music, and I'm a Nancy Griffith super fan. And so she knew me from opening her shows, and she just said, Mary, why don't you play us one? And she handed me her guitar. And I played it, and I think I held my own okay. And at the end, she told me to keep her guitar, and I have it right here. It's right back there.
Mary Gaucher was such a great interview. She wrote a book, Saved by a Song, her memoir. She has really fabulous stories, and what a good, kind, giving person.
What do you think was our most popular? I guess I'll just say most popular because it's been airing since March. But what was our most popular interview?
Oh, that's very interesting. If it's been airing since March, you're giving me a hint.
I am giving you a hint. It was a really fun episode because you could totally relate to it because you were a part of that scene.
Are you talking about our talk with Tom Beaujour and Richard Beanstalk?
Yes, I am, Holly. Yeah, they were our most popular interview from 2021.
Funny, like you think pre-internet, like
Yeah.
how did you learn all this stuff? But like you just did, and you found these records, and I mean, I searched for probably 15 years to find the Leather Records version of Too Fast for Love. And when I finally did, it was like I found it in London, like in like the mid 90s, and I couldn't afford to buy it because they were selling it for like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And I remember begging them to play it in the store just because I wanted to hear it, because I had been trying to hear it for most of my life at that point, and they wouldn't do it. But then like a few years later, the internet was everywhere, and like I just downloaded it, and that was that, and then I heard it. But you would devote your life to finding out this information, and you would.
And Headbangers Ball, I mean, every Saturday, once you're in and you sort of become a completist, like, I mean, I could not even venture to tally the number of bands I saw a video on Headbangers Ball and went and bought the record. And, the bands on Headbangers Ball, most of those videos did not transcend into Dial MTV. And, that was sort of like, let's put it on here and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But, like bands like Lily and Axe and Law and Order and things with Dangerous Toys, things that we don't even talk about in the band, there was this one place, there was Headbangers Ball. And if you the amount of information that you could get just from faithfully watching that every week, which I did probably for 4 years in a row. And I think that it's why also people who are into this music, who are our age, now it's difficult to talk to people about music, I feel like, because there's a million bands, but there were X number of bands that were played on Headbangers Ball during those years. And like me, I know them, and Rich knows them, and everybody else, because we were all watching the same thing. And even the ones that didn't make it, it's like, oh yeah, I love that band, I wonder what happened to them. So there was this common place that you congregated that was curated and much more finite than the interwebs of today.
Tom Beaujour and Richard Beanstalk promoting their Nothing But a Good Time book, which was indeed Nothing But a Good Time.
I lived that book. You were right. I don't know how I didn't pick that up. I totally lived that book. They're my people.
There you
I hope we have them back. They're, also full of rock and roll knowledge.
Indeed they are. And then so also talking about the time we talked haircuts and things like that. One of our favorites though was as we interviewed Lawrence Gowan, who's the keyboardist in Styx. And we were like, okay, we'll talk to Lawrence Gowan of Styx. That should be fun. And then we did our research and we were looking at videos and we're like, dear God, this man had an amazing mullet.
I'm quite proud of that Uber mullet that I had.
Yes, we are fans of the mullet, and you had a mighty fine one, my friend.
If you Google it, I think it's rated number 7 of all time. I think I was only beaten out. I think John Stamos is one ahead of me.
Stamos.
I think MacGyver came in first place, but yeah, I've heard it called all kinds of names since then. The funniest one I heard recently was. One friend of mine, a British friend, he happened to see one of the old videos for the first time, like Cosmetics. And he said, God, man, that's quite the Kentucky waterfall you had on there.
Oh, yeah.
Never heard that expression.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Kentucky waterfall?
What?
Yeah.
I think I prefer mullet.
It's got a lot of...
You know what? I want to change it to the French pronunciation, the moulet. Mine was a moulet because it had that French influence from Quebec.
Okay, and it's good to know that we're now talking to the owner of one of the finest moulets around.
I can't believe that you didn't start the whole interview with that. I mean, that is that, and then recording at the Beatles house. I mean, just, get your priorities together.
You're right. Moulet, then Beatles. Okay. Yeah.
He was such a delight.
Pull up any Gowan video and just treat yourself to the amazing hairstylings of Lawrence Gowan. Truly a work of art. And he's a talented musician as well.
So are we on a hair theme?
Are we on a hair theme? Do Do you have another hair anecdote you'd like to share?
Well, it's not a hair anecdote, but I do remember some good hair from the band Spandau Ballet in the 80s. They had some great 80s hair and fashion.
Previous year, we talked to Dylan Jones about the New Romantics and that whole world. And so
Of the Blitz Kids.
Of the Blitz Kids, yeah. So now we got to actually talk to a musician that was a Blitz Kid, and that was Gary Kemp of Spandau Ballet. And so, of course, we had to talk about that whole scene and get into the fashion and kind of learn about how important it was.
Oh, no, I remember my dad taking me to a market when I was about 11. I'm begging him to get some mohair trousers, baggy mohair trousers, which sort of suede heads and skin heads were wearing. And of course, he took me to some tiny little tailor who was fantastic, and he made these trousers for me. I was very made up. But later, when we were at the Blitz Club, I remember, and I'm living at home with my parents, and I said, I really want to. I've imagined these trousers that I want, Mum. And she was a seamstress, but I don't know if she's very good. And I drew these trousers on a piece of paper. I said I want them flat fronted and just cut out. I bought this material which was electric blue, and I said, just giant pegs I want. So she made these these trousers for me. They were quite tight. I got them on. I had to pin them together, but she forgot to put any zippers in them and any flies. And I remember sort of going to the club and then going down to the toilet and just struggling to get them off. I couldn't get them off, and I had to go to a cubicle. I won't go any further.
I gotta say, like I said, this year, each interview was more exciting and fun than the next. It was just such a great year. But when you remember how I was when you booked Gary Kemp, I was like giddy. This was like a dream for me, as I was a huge fan. But he was so great. He released a new album. He released a solo album in solo. I know that these guys are trained in working with the media, but he made us so comfortable, and he asked us questions.
Yeah, well, that's because he has his own podcast.
Yes, he does. So could we be a raconteur also? Yep. Raconteurs also?
Yeah, sure. Why not? We were the raconteurs. All right. We're looking back at the year that is 2021. We're looking back, but now we will look forward to coming back from our break.
Welcome back to our look back at 2021 on the What Difference Does It Make podcast.
It's not a glamorous rock and roll lifestyle a lot of times. And I think we learned that when we talked with Kristen Hirsch of Throwing Muses. She's a true artist. She didn't want to sell out her soul to become a musician. She wanted to create her art. But she had to rely on these strange angels to help make her dreams come true and to help put out that art. So Kristen Hirsch has the book Seeing Sideways, and in there she described the impact that the strange angels had.
Our bus was a great solution for us all to live on a bus and never stop working and traveling. And then the bus, there was a fiery crash on a mountainside, and that was our home. It was our livelihood. It was everything my children had known. And we pulled all our money. I told my bandmates, I'll fly you home. You're off the hook here. This is my failure. You cannot play good music. My bad. I thought you could. You cannot not whore yourself out, blah, blah, blah. And they said, no way. We're pulling our money. We're all going to finish this tour. So by the time we got to the next club, all these people had started writing saying, we heard about your bus crash. We want to give you studio time. We want you to stay with us. We're going to give you guitars, amps, play my club. What can we do so that you don't stop playing music? I'm crying right now just talking about it. But that was the Strange Angels. That became how my family continued, how my music continued, how I continued. I don't know what I would have done. I was ready to just, drive off the mountainside that day, but they're still doing it. I can still make records for 3 recording entities because some people want to hear it. And it has struck the chord within me to do the same. We help homeless every day here. My son and I go out, and it's, we live in Southern California. It's like 25% of the nation's homeless or something. And it became just a lifestyle. And then I realized that there are too many tendrils of giving that I have ignored. It isn't just the hungry, but also these strange angels who would write and say, oh, I just lost my job, but it's going to be a few months. And so we made this rule: only if you can afford it. And for real, like, we'll find a way to get you your soundtrack. If you can't pay for it, it will always be free. And they've come to me and said, well, I'm starting a new business. And I was like, what is it? And it's CSA, and so we get farm vegetables for the family. And it's become this network of not just giving, but receiving. Even the homeless, they tell us these stories that I would never have known what humanity was here. This is like hunter-gatherer society in an urban environment. There's just so many different ways to give.
I loved hearing her talk about them. She's such an ethereal presence almost, and she feels also when you're talking to her like she could be your best friend.
I believe the two of you had a nice connection together. It was nice. Two mothers bonding together.
Moms, exactly. She is a mom of 4 kids, and they've had a very an interesting life. But yes, we totally bonded.
So it's also great because we have musicians, that they actually play something for us. Can you imagine? They actually picked up an instrument and played. So that was really actually pretty cool. We've learned that Jude Cole is, we talked with Jude. He has 2 great albums that came out this year. Really good albums. It was Kudamon and Coolerator. Coolerator was a bunch of are some cover songs that he loves.
From the 50s.
From the 50s, and Kudamon are originals. And he's learning to play the banjo, and he's actually really good at it. So he kind of did a little rehearsal for us.
It's interesting. I'm at that place at banjo where I'm actually, I'll play on my own. I'm pretty good. And then I get in front of people and I forget everything I know. So the childhood nerves come back. It's weird, but I wouldn't think I'd have that, but I still do on instruments I'm not that familiar with. So I'm going to use you two now and see if I can get through the first part of Foggy Mountain. See, I mess up, and I don't do that alone. I get through it flawlessly alone. And then when I play in front of people, I become a complete novice. So
that was absolutely worth the price of admission. And he's just so cool.
He is very cool. Really nice to be reminded of the great music that he created back in the day, and now is still kicking it, doing some great stuff. Back in the day when Fee Waybill and the Tubes were creating music, they were playing in-house at the Whiskey, and then they had to record. Apparently the Tubes weren't necessarily up to the task.
So how do you drive a producer crazy?
And then the 4th album was Now, and that was by a producer named John Anthony. It was a crazy schedule. We all still lived in San Francisco at the time, and we had come to LA, and we were playing the Whiskey A Go-Go. And we played the Whiskey for, I think, that's what kind of drove me insane. We played the Whiskey 2 shows a night for 3 weeks in a row.
Oh, a residency.
Yeah. And
nice.
Then at 2:00 in the morning, we're all drunk out of our minds. We would go to the studio to record. We would record from like 2 until 10.
Yeah.
And then, go home and sleep all day. And he had never worked like that before. And here we come in the studio after, doing 2 sets at the Whiskey, and we're all completely, high as kites. He just couldn't handle it. He just said, can't we just do a regular session? No, sorry. we're sleeping all day because we got a gig at night. And so that was kind of that was insane. And then he ended up leaving. And so it was left to us, and we had the second engineer on the project was a guy named Don Wood, who was he was like our front of house sound guy for touring. And so he took over, and we finished the record with him. And that was not a great record. And I mean, there was some wacky songs on it, but the great part about that record was we had Captain Beefheart come and play on our record. And we were all huge fans of Captain Beefheart. And he played on Kathy's Clone, and we did a Beefheart song, My Head is My Only House Unless It Rains. And so that was really cool. And that's the best thing about that album.
But yeah, it's good to know that he also has a new album that came out this year called Fee Waybill Rides Again. You know, the Tubes aren't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Gary Kemp's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but John Ilsley is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
John Ilsley, the bass player from Dire Straits. He wrote a book.
He did. It's called My Life in Dire Straits. He went into his crazy Rock and Roll Hall of Fame story. It's just too much to believe.
Well, put very simply, what happened was that the people who were running the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame decided who they wanted to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And they decided, without talking to us at all, without consulting us, that they wanted the original band to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And they've done this before with bands that have broken up tens of years ago. And they think that by saying, we want the original band to get back together and come to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that's going to happen. Well, it doesn't work like that. And, Mark quite rightly, said, I don't feel comfortable with this. And neither did I. It felt very odd to suddenly invite David and Pick, who we pretty much lost contact with completely, apart from the occasional email now and again, to suddenly put those two people back together in a situation across the world and try and make that work. It seemed just really odd. Mark said, well, he said, I don't really feel comfortable with this, to be frank. And I said, well, neither do I, mate. But, and he said, I'm definitely not going. And I had to think about it quite carefully. And the problem with him not going was the fact that meant that it was going to be very difficult to get somebody to induct us into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So it all got a bit weird at one point. And I don't think they handled it very well, to be honest. So I just said to them the morning of the thing, well, if you can't find anybody to induct us into this thing that you've got here, I'm going to do it. And they went, well, you can't do that. And I said, well, you give me no choice.
Right.
You give me absolutely no choice. And I got a bit angry about it at one point, and I stopped myself and I said, okay, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to do this thing. And if you don't want me to do it, then we probably won't do it at all. So it's up to you. And in the end, they said, okay. So it was kind of weird, but suddenly you have to realize that it's going to go on, and you just have to be grown up about it. And for me, it was a recognition by a pretty important organization of the band's history and kind of a celebration, of what we had achieved. And so I wanted to go there and represent the band and say thank you. Very simple as that. And I would have loved to have played. And to be perfectly frank, we could have got something organized if they'd have been amenable to that. But they, certain members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame were being pretty damned awkward, if I'm perfectly honest. I'm very happy to say that. It was all too complicated and political and just got a bit sort of out of control. And I just didn't want to go there, really, to be honest. I wanted this book to be a celebration rather than an annoyance.
Okay. He seems so genuine. I said this about a lot of them, but he's so genuine and low key for a rock star and a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. He owns a pub in his hometown. He's also super cool. He could be your friend.
He could be your friend. I believe he was our friend for an hour.
He was.
I think of all the bands we listened to over this year or talked to, I started doing a deep dive into Dire Straits and their whole catalog, and I just fell back in love with the band. It was one of those instances where it's like, you know what? I think John was right. Like, you know what? We made some great albums. We don't need to create any more necessarily. We did it. We became the biggest. They were literally the biggest band in the world. In 1985, the year that we're going to attack this year, Dire Straits were the biggest band in the world with Brothers in Arms. For a band that was that big, it's kind of strange how, they're not necessarily classic rock artists like your favorites. I don't think Dire Straits is listed as or remembered as like that was a great band that you need to revisit. But it is.
I think you're right. I agree with you. But I think you're right in that observation. Yet all the generations know Dire Straits. My own kids, know and like Dire Straits. And I think John may have said it himself that kids, later generations are just as familiar with Dire Straits. Yet you're right. They probably aren't on everybody's, top 10 list, but they should be.
So then we also talked to another future Rock and Roll Hall of Fame artist. That was Gina Schock, drummer for the Go-Go's. And of course, she was thrilled to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Apparently, the Go-Go's are going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Is that true?
Yeah, how about that one?
How about that? That's spectacular.
It's about time is all I have to say. But you know what? Better late than never. We were all sort of over the whole idea of it because every year it would come and go. And we're like, God damn it, what's wrong with these people? We should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And especially, I don't know, it's just getting a lot of pressure from my friends more than the band. All your friends are like, what's going on? What's up with this? I'm like, I don't know. We're just doing what we do. We know what our contribution was and is, and we'll just continue doing what we're doing. And hopefully they're going to recognize that. And so then it happened, that we were nominated. Now we're going to be inducted. And it's like, shit. Yeah. Finally, it's great. It's a wonderful thing. I'm pretty excited about it. And I know everyone in the band's excited about it.
And now you have credibility with your friends.
Yeah, really. It's like all my
finally
friends,
you're someone.
when I see them, they can't believe it. I'm like, oh God, neither can I. It's about time though.
Do you think it was the documentary last year that came out that was like, you know what? The Go-Go's had quite an impact on.
Yeah, Dave, I think that really sort of jogged people's memories and got their brain flowing in a Go-Go's manner. I think like people started thinking more about the band because the documentary was fantastic. Alison Elwood did an incredible job. What a brilliant documentarian she is. The way she told our story was perfect. I mean, we couldn't have been happier with the way she put it together and how she edited. I love that documentary. We're all very, very happy with it. I think when, that coming out, and also, it won a Critics Award and it premiered at Sundance. But of course, that's when COVID was just starting. But, that was something that I'm very proud of as well. And so happy that Alison did the job she did because it's great.
So you say she's thrilled to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think she was just as thrilled to be a guest on our podcast.
No, you were thrilled to have her on our podcast.
I was. Like I said, the year just kept getting better and better. She is a delight. And I got to say, I love her accent. She has retained that Baltimore accent. And she's just you sensed her genuine excitement for being in the Rock Hall, but also for being able to experience the life she's led.
And now turning our attention to a non-musician, but an amazingly talented writer. David Wild probably had our most commented upon clip of 2021. And that was his story of Paul and Linda McCartney talking about David's sons.
This is Paul with my two sons at the backstage at the Grammys. And here's that crazy story.
Oh, that's your Twitter photo, by the way, right?
That is, yes. That's
okay.
That's my Twitter photo. And it's one of the most meaningful ones for me because 30 years ago, I went on the road for Rolling Stone with Paul McCartney around the world. We went to South America.
Oh.
That was Linda's last big tour with Paul. Linda, unlike Holly, occasionally someone will take a liking to me. And Linda liked me. And for some reason, she did things like she took a photo of me backstage and said, I know you write books, so here's your free author's photo. So I had a portrait that I could put on books for years by Linda McCartney. She also, most importantly, when we got back to the States, we went through New Jersey, where I'm from, and she said, and I think maybe she had someone in mind to set me up with. She goes, do you have a girlfriend? And I went, I actually just met a great girl, and she's in New York visiting and this is my wife, Fran, now, but she goes, I want to meet her. So I said, well, she's in New York. She could come out. She goes, bring her. She goes, invite her to sound check tomorrow at Giant Stadium.
Who was at that show?
Show off.
No, well, and what? Oh no, the best thing is a Paul McCartney sound check is better than a Paul McCartney concert because he does nothing from the concert. He did only other Beatles songs or early covers or favorite. He just riffs. And to this day, I went to one a couple of years ago. That's how he does it. Now he sells these tickets to that for charity to raise money for great causes. But at that point, I was the great cause, was trying to get me laid. And so Linda said, bring this girl. And this is like my fourth date with my wife is this. So that's why I'm still married. And so and even though my wife doesn't like music or didn't then, but she still was impressed. This was a good invitation to lunch. Yeah. So we watched soundcheck, and then we had lunch with Linda and Paul's like there in the afterwards. That's a hell of a good date. But after that, Linda pulled me aside and she said, I'll never forget it. She goes, do you think I know about marriage? And I'd been on the road with them and I realized they had this amazing marriage. And I went, yeah. And I grew up as in a divorced family. I didn't know much about good marriages, but I could tell this was better than that. And she goes, marry that girl now. And I went, what? She goes, just do what I say, marry her now. So that was Linda's gift to me. I proposed to my wife within a few months of that. We got married really quickly. And so cut to Linda sends me the photo, Linda gets sick, and Linda is gone. All so sad. But when Paul finally, years later, came to the Grammys, which he had never done, I'm backstage at the prompter working with talent, which is what I do. Like we run through what the script is and we make changes and add a joke or take a joke away. My wife, who smartly kept our kids away from show business, by the time they were like 12 and 14, said, okay, they can come to the Grammys, one show a year with her. That's like the only show my wife ever came to. She's coming backstage to where I am, and she goes, I have to show you a picture. And that picture is, my wife took it because she's walking down the hall to find me, and Paul McCartney jumps up and says, and I tell you, even backstage at the Grammys, everyone is trying to get a photo of Paul. He does not ask to get a lot of photos. Paul said, I need a picture with those boys. And my wife took this picture of Paul surrounding the two of them. For years after this, I had two theories. One, Linda's spirit was telling him this, because there's no way Paul could have remembered what my wife looked like and realized it was my kids. I couldn't believe that could be the case. Or the Jonas Brothers were on the show that year, and the boys looked a little bit like Jonas Brothers. I am from New Jersey. So I thought it's one of two things. It's either the hand of God through Linda, or it's the Jonas Brothers scenario. Cut to, for the anniversary of, I think it was the 60th anniversary of the Grammys. I'm so tired now, I don't know. I was sent to Chicago to talk to Paul about the Grammys. We were told you have 10 minutes with Paul on the side of the stage before he goes on in this amphitheater in Illinois. So I'm standing there grabbing quick questions as he's about to go on stage. We finish a minute before he goes on stage. So we're standing there on the side of the stage. And I said, Paul, I got to ask you one more question, not for this. And he goes, what? I go, and I told him, I said, I have the two things it could be why you asked for this picture. And he started to tear up. And he said, don't make me cry before I go on stage. Okay. And I realized it wasn't at least in our hearts and minds, it was Linda. So that's why that will always be on my phone. Always. That's the most important photo of all.
I just say how much I love having David on the show? He is so funny and so smart, and he's such a great writer, and he's so well spoken, and he always has an enormous contribution. We could talk to him every week and he would have something new to add. He is a total treat. And I hope that he will keep coming back for as long as he wants to come back.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah. So he got to meet his idol. What you might forget is that sometimes a lot of these musicians also have idols that they want to talk to. And we had a number of those instances. Okay. So we all know the song Pure Energy by Information Society, where Leonard Nimoy is saying pure energy.
Pure.
Pure energy. You know, they do that over and over again.
A clip from Star Trek, in case you're not familiar with it.
Leonard Nimoy played a Vulcan named Spock on this little known show called Star Trek. And Kurt Larson of Information Society sampled that little clip of him and put it in the song, and it became a #1 hit. And he actually got the opportunity to talk to Leonard Nimoy and to find out if he even knew about it.
We were thrilled, that Leonard Nimoy himself, had become the midwife of the Information Society album. But we always kind of suspected that it was one of those stories that they tell at record companies that's not only embellished, but kind of ridiculously made up. But lo and behold, 10 years later or more, a photography show going on here in San Francisco. There are all these different photographers showing their works, and most of them had, books being published of their photography. And I don't know how much you know about Leonard Nimoy, but one of the things he did in his late career was he got into photography.
Yeah.
So he was one of the people showing. Now, I thought of that as the Leonard Nimoy photography event, and we're going to go to it. And I thought, wow, maybe I can even like say hi to him. And we got there pretty early. There weren't many people there yet. And Leonard Nimoy was sitting at a table by himself with one assistant. Like, there was nobody there to talk to him at all. So I just got to stand there and talk to Leonard Nimoy for half an hour. And one of the things I asked him about was, hey, I'm going to check with you and see if this actually happened. Because we've been told, that blah, blah, blah. And he listened for a while and he eventually went, oh, yes, I remember that. That was one of Adam's things. Yeah. Yes, that's true. I did do that. I never heard the song.
So Kurt Larson of Information Society, he got to meet Leonard Nimoy. That was a good way to do it. Our friend Alec Whiteman, he is on the board of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he has a great book, Music in His Life is what it's called.
Music in My Life.
Oh, why did I put music in his life?
Because it is his life. The title
it's not my life, it's his life. You're right.
Exactly.
So Alec Whiteman has a book, Music in My Life, and he, of course, like the whole world loves Bruce Springsteen, and you see him across the hall and you want to say hello. What do? Fortunately, Alec had an in. He had a mutual friend. Go ahead and tell us how Tom Russell got you your in with Springsteen.
Well, Tom had showed me, some point 96, 97, a letter that he had received from Bruce. He was living in Brooklyn, and he got a brown envelope in the mail one day that says that has a letter inside congratulating him on his new CD, and it's signed by Bruce Springsteen. He I think to Tom's knowledge, he had no connection with it. Where that got to Bruce, I don't know. Bruce was kind enough to write to him, and he showed it to me, which was a big deal. So yes, I was at an after party relatively early in my tenure on the Rock Hall board, and I saw Bruce standing across the way with a woman leaning against the bar at the Bull and the Bear at the Waldorf Astoria. It was a private party that Jan was throwing after an induction ceremony. And it was, 2:30 in the morning. And I mustered the courage to walk over, and Bruce was just leaning against the bar. And the woman was standing next to him. And I walked up and said, I'm Alec Whiteman. I'm on the board of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I just wanted to thank you for all you've done for the Rock Hall. And he just leaned there with his arms folded. He was nice. I don't mean to imply anything to the negative, because he's a wonderful guy, but he was unmoved at that point. And I said, and I have to tell you, I have a good friend named Tom Russell who once showed me a letter you wrote him congratulating him on his new CD. And Bruce stood up real straight and his eyes lit up and he shook my hand. He says, I remember writing that letter. He said, Tom and I have never met. And I said, yeah, I understand that. But I said, he'll be getting an email from me at 3:30 in the morning telling him I met you. And with that, she stuck out her hand and said, I'm Patty Scialfa. And I said, I know who you are. And, didn't want to disturb them, but thanked them both, talked for a couple of minutes and walked away.
Okay, so that is the right way to do it. You have an in, you've got a good friend. Maybe your friend Bruce Springsteen will open up to you and talk a little bit to you. Very exciting. Perhaps you're a Tom Sharpling and you see Patti Smith and she is your, you love Patti Smith, but you don't want to seem like be gushing. You want to be cool.
That always works out really well.
That right. When you try and be cooler than the artist, does that work? How do I stand out from the rest of these dweebs that ask Patty a question?
I should have just tried to fit in with the rest of the dweebs, but I became I transcended dweebness or whatever with my question, where I asked sharing an elevator with Patti Smith in San Francisco, and I was just like, like you said, what can I say to her that will just make me stand out from the pack? And then I remembered a conversation I had with a cab driver in Memphis who insisted that the best band he had ever seen live was Humble Pie. And so then I asked Patti Smith, did you ever see Humble Pie back in the day? And then back in the day is a phrase I've never used before or since. And so it felt completely unnatural coming out of my mouth. And she seemed slightly terrified by the question. And I'm pretty sure she got off on a floor lower than her floor just to get away from me. And she's probably in the stairwell trying to get back to her room just to get away from the weird guy in the elevator asking about Humble Pie. So it did not go well.
Thanks to Tom for that story. Now I know how not to do it. And then I guess we should close out this episode by talking about someone who's not even a musician.
You say not even as if he's nothing.
No, he's nothing. He's just Phil Rosenthal. He just created Everybody Loves Raymond, and
he's got a show called Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix.
Yes.
Maybe you've seen that.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe you have, and maybe you think he's just the funniest guy in the world, and just a tremendously talented man, and you get to talk to this guy. So that.
And we got to talk to him courtesy of his bestie, David Wild.
Yes. Well, thanks to David Wild, we did get to talk to Phil Rosenthal. And, what are you going to do when you have someone who loves comedy and someone who loves food? You talk Bruce Springsteen, of course.
I was prepared to let you guys do it when I knew that we were going to grill him a little bit about Springsteen, even though I could have happily talked about food and travel and Ray Romano and everything else about his life. I knew that you guys were going to want to Springsteen him up, so I was prepared to let you and David do the heavy lifting. But I don't know. I kind of got into it too, and really got into all his stories. But yes, the Springsteen stories. Kind of all roads led back to Springsteen in this.
Yes, and when Phil's passionate about something, you really know it because he really gets into it. We asked Phil we wondered what Phil's favorite Bruce Springsteen song is.
I think I have one. I think
have one at the ready.
What is it?
Okay.
I think it's 10th Avenue Freeze Out.
Because
it has everything that I love about Springsteen.
It tells his story.
The joy, the majesty. That opening is like the king is coming. Bum, 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 bum. It's like a fanfare. And then the drum roll, and then you're in this great, joyous, swinging rock and roll that has ties to the swing era of jazz, and it's just a big, fun song.
Are we going to end with Phil Rosenthal? But you would. I think Holly loves to acknowledge everyone, which we should. I mean, first of all, Before you get started, Holly, I want to thank Joel Graves, who he created our theme song. He composed it. He wrote it, and it's just brilliant. And we play it every episode. And I'm just so thankful for Joel for creating this wonderful 1 minute block of music that we play on every episode. So Thank you to Joel Graves. Thank you to Nick Longo, who has created our logo. We love Nick Longo. He's whenever we need something, he gives us a little touch up. And so thank you, Nick. And then, but we also had others in 2021 that Holly will acknowledge it as well. That she was giddy about. You were giddy about all these people.
I feel so lucky. We had such a great year with guests. And I want to mention everybody. I mean, I'm looking at this list and the authors that we talked to, authors, who are also artists, but some of them wrote books. Like, oh my God, Richard Blade. We love Richard Blade is our current and our history. And he's actually, quite an author. He has a few books, but he was fabulous and always, knowledgeable. Midge Truby is such a treat. She wrote this cookbook, Rock Doesn't Roll on an Empty Stomach, and she's traveled with all the, old rock and roll bands. Well, I say old, but like 70s. She is a sheer delight, and she will always be a friend of the show. She was so much fun. Like JJ French and Steve Farber, JJ French of Twisted Sister. They were fun. They were fun and, insightful. And Tom Beaujour and Richard Beanstalk, who you already mentioned, but they are, should be our rock and roll encyclopedia from now on. There were just, I can't even.
I should also mention, I think your favorite, Annie Zaleski, who wrote a book about Duran Duran. The 33 and a third book about Rio is really wonderful. Duran Duran's new album that came out this year, I listened to it this week, and it is a banger. I am shocked how good this is. Like, oh my God, one of my favorites from this year. I was really happy to hear Duran Duran is back. Their album is called Future Past, and I highly recommend you give it a listen or two or three. So thank you to Annie for rekindling my love of Duran Duran. And also thank you to my friend who we had on the show, Melissa Gould. Has an amazing book that just did phenomenally well this year called Widowish. Joel Oberstein, one of my really great friends, unfortunately passed away a number of years ago. But Melissa has written this amazing book, Widowish, that I highly recommend. It's really a wonderful read. So thank you to Melissa for jumping onto our 80s podcast to talk about this issue. It was a really good episode.
I think that kicked off our literary year, right? She might have been our first author interview. And we talked to Paul Reese, who wrote a book on John Mellencamp, and Kat Goldman, who wrote a memoir. She's a singer-songwriter. And Michelangelo Matos, Jonathan McHugh, Gary Spivak, and R.J. Hale from the movie Long Live Rock, which was a really great kind of a tribute to heavy metal rock festivals. Indeed. Jonathan McHugh directed it. Gary was the producer. R.J. Hale is one of the artists featured from Hailstorm. It was fun to talk about that, to learn more about that heavy metal vibe and the camaraderie of the fans. It was a good one, and the movie was fun to watch. And which we didn't talk about when we were talking about our Rock Hall, our Rock Hall people. Joe Quazala and Kristen Studdard have a podcast, Who Cares About the Rock Hall? They were fun to talk to, got a lot of good insights on the whole Rock Hall, how the voting goes down. It was pretty interesting.
We put out episodes every Friday. So I suggest please subscribe. Spotify has ratings now. So if you listen on Spotify, give us a 5 rating, please. Last but not least, I'd like to also thank 2 people. First of all, Emma Sloan, my daughter, was on an episode where we talked about the songs from the year she graduated in 2017 to the year 1984, which just happens to be the year I graduated high school. So that was a really wonderful talk. And then finally, I would like to thank Holly for sticking with me for all of 2021. It's been quite a journey. Fortunately, I got to see you live and in person in 2021, so that was cool. We saw, we went to the movies, we ate food, we did some things, so that was nice.
We did. We had some Apollonia's pizza.
Thanks, Phil Rosenthal, for that. We saw some Sparks movies.
We were able to get together a few times, which was really, really fun and a treat and kind of surprising.
Yeah,
the
when
way
I-
things are going.
When I listened to our 2020 episode, we had mentioned that we hadn't seen each other in 9 months, and that you could have had a baby at that time. So
In
I'm like,
theory.
in theory, like I am okay.
Well, can I say thank you to you too? I feel so fortunate and just so lucky to be able to do this with you. I enjoy every one of our shows and your friendship as well. So thank you.
Pleasure is mutual. Again, I look forward to doing this in 2022. This is fun. Let's keep doing it.
Cheers to 2022.
All right. Please don't make it a 2020 TOO. Let's make it a 2022, like a new year where we get to enjoy the things that we love to do.
Yes.
All I'm saying is I'm looking forward to New Year. So cheers. I wish I have just a cup of water. So you're not supposed to cheers water. That's bad luck, I think.
Oh, really?
I think so. I think I read something. It's got to be something substantial.
I've never heard that.
Maybe I just made it up. I don't know.
Well, cheers to you.
All right. Well, cheers to you. And until next time, this is Dave.
This is Holly.
Check you later.
Over and out.